Hey guys, this is Eric Weingart with Weingart Racing. This is Saturday, so it's an update video day, but the largest part of this video has to do with a thumbnail, which is I found where the missing power is on that Circle Track Dyno Mule engine that we have, which is a 414 Circle Track engine. Before I get to any of that, though, we need to talk about the small block Chevy Cam Challenge. So if you've been watching my other videos, which I hope you have because it really helps out everything, I'd said, you know what, we're going to do a shelf cam. So if you guys have a recommendation for something you want to see for a shelf cam, if you email me by yesterday, whatever one gets the most votes, I would go ahead and order. Well, only 7 people did that, and none of them were the same. So what I did is I picked one that was kind of in the middle, and this is what I came up with. So this is it right here. I'll be ordering it today. I'll just go ahead and tell you what it is. This is a Comp Cam's Thumper Cam. I picked the Thumper, although a lot of people recommended one of the Thumper ones anyway, because, well, it's the most common one, and I think this one will be pretty good. It's a 243 duration on intake, 257 on exhaust. It's on a 107. I can't tell exactly how much lift it will have or even what the low lift is because it doesn't say on this thing here. But this cam isn't cheap. It's at $470, or sorry, retails $549. So it's a $550 cam, although I'm not paying that much because I got a dealer thing with it. But anyway, that's how much it is. I have to say, though, when I was looking, because I was most curious on this, and this may sound somewhat like sales pitchy, but when I was looking on Summit's website, and Summit's helped out a lot, truly a lot with this small block Chevy as far as the parts and everything. By far the biggest help. Scat also has helped with the rotating assembly and that stuff. Race Tech with the pistons and things like that. Very helpful as well. But anyway, when I was looking on the website, because I was looking on Summit's website and I clicked on what was in stock, what was a hydraulic roller, to see what they have. If you look at the prices on their camshafts from the Summit camshafts and look at the others, it's phenomenal. I want to ask Brian if they're, I'm assuming that they're American-made cores and how they're getting them. Because, for instance, this Comp Cams, which Comp Cams now owned by a private equity, whatever, so it adds up. But that retail on that's like $550. But if you do the Summit ones, and they're an LS firing order, and usually those cores are so much more expensive, those are only like retail $270. So way, way cheaper than this. About $200 I could have saved. But I thought I'd give the Thumper a try because it does get asked about a lot. So anyway, there's that little sales pitchy right there, but I'm really surprised about Summit's cost of the camshaft. Definitely keep it cheaper for the racers. Thank you. However, Gerald Brand's camshaft, I've got its specs here. I need to add these to the link, your cam challenge link, which I'll get to. I just haven't had time really to mess with it. I've sent it out to everybody, so if you don't have the cam challenge link, and you're like, hey, I donated, but I don't have that information for whatever, check your spam mail, because literally every single one that's emailed me and was like, I don't have it. I thought you were going to send it out, because they always go negative when you do that every time. Why don't I have the information? You said you'd send it out. And it'd be sent out the day after they donated or the 2 days later. And I have a record because you can pull up the review on Gmail, and when you sent stuff, it's always been sent. So if you don't have it, you need to check your mail. But if not, just email me back and I'll resend it. But I need to update that link with the Summit Cam Card Shelf one, and then also this one and the Thumper one. So anyway, Gerald Brand, he sent in this one, and it's 237.9, so call it 238 on intake and 252 on exhaust. And this is a 107 lobe separation as well. So, wow, this will be interesting. Neat stuff. That cam will get dropped, card will get dropped in there too. Speaking of which, if you're like, hey, I don't even know what you're talking about, how do I get to look at all these cam cards and the dyno sheets? If you donate to the Cam Challenge, and I will put a link in the description for this video, if you donate to it, you'll be sent a link that goes to your email, and that link is tied to your email. So you're not allowed to share it with other people that didn't donate. And there's a legal thing that's actually in it, so it's a no-no to do that. So you can't share it with someone that then gets to post that picture on a forum or something. That's forbidden. So it's not that much to donate anyway. It's $20 literally, which is barely over a price of a McDonald's meal at this point. But anyway, what happens with that money? That money goes to the one to pay for the huge parts bill. I'm not going to break even. And then it also goes to the winner. Matter of fact, in case you're wondering, well, how much? You must make like thousands and thousands on this thing. The total amount of donations for the Small Block Chevy Cam Challenge as of 5 minutes before doing this was $4,572. Okay. Just to give you an idea, I'm fixing to buy the Dominator ECU. My cost on that, I think, is $1,800. And then I am going to buy the 8 EGT sensor kit for the Holley EFI stuff, because I'm going to save all those data logs, and those are going to get dropped in that cam challenge link too. So you can see how the EGTs are for each camshaft. We could see how that works as well. Just more information, really. But that alone, I think, is $1,400. Remember, this is taking place at Coons, which is in Arkadelphia. So I'm out of a hotel room for one night when I stayed to drop off my son 2 weeks ago. That was $172 a night. So if you're thinking that this is like magically making money, you're incorrect. And that's the reason why I probably won't do very many more, if I do any more of these at all, because it's a lose money thing. So not woe is me, just want to be upfront. So there's what's going on with that. So yeah, donate helps out the cause, but those would be some cool. You have at least 2 shelf cam shafts that are in there, and we'll get to see how they compare. So, but anyway, let's get to the other stuff that happened in the shop. Mainly, finding the missing power from the Circle Track engine. So let's describe what the engine is first, and we'll go through that. Then I'll show you a couple of things that were found. So first off, it's a small block Chevy. It's a 414 engine. I think I built it in 2019, somewhere in that range. Anyway, what had happened, and this goes in an A mod. Every state seems like they run a different race rules, but this is an IMCA type body or whatever. That's what it looks like to me. They have a 7,500 RPM limit if you run an open motor, which is what this one was. Anyway, you had to run 23-degree heads. You couldn't run aluminum block, though. You could run a cast iron block. But anyway, so this one had my Brodix Dragon Slayers that I ported on it. They didn't require shaft rockers, although he did run shaft rockers. It had a ported Holley 300-110. The short block originally was from Mullen, so he just bought a Mullen short block. And it already had everything, the pan and all that was all buttoned up, except for except for the pan. They ended up changing the pan because they went to this Olson, which is a really nice pan. And he changed that. He had me put the heads on and did the whole top end rest of assembly, went and dynoed it, and it made 697. So they won like 4 or 5 races as that was. And then as the season, they ran for like, I want to say a season and a half. And then what happened is it cracked the piston right across the top. It was smoking, which they got really, really lucky because it just could have let go. They caught it. They took it out. They had someone else rebuild it. They put in new pistons. They overbored it. They dynoed it with 652. And now maybe their dyno read lower than Dunsworth, which would be extremely rare for me to ever have happen, but maybe. So anyway, they went out and ran it like, no, it's really is slower than what it was before. They wouldn't, that shop that rebuilt it wouldn't let me touch the heads, so they redid the heads. So I was like, oh crap, they probably did something that caused it to lose horsepower, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, they left the racing after it got it freshened up. They ran maybe eight weekends. And I need to point this out because I was probably a little confused in the last video that you watched. When they do races, they don't race one track in a weekend. So they might Friday at one track, Saturday at another track. So their half season could be someone else's full season, if I'm being honest. Especially some of the tracks that only run like once a month. These are like every weekend they run, and they're running multiple ones often. So especially in several of those, they'll do 3-day races where it's at one track, and you get the idea. If you do circle track, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So the point is, this isn't just light use. This was a lot of use, but still 8 races. And then it's set for 2 years, and I pick it up. We put it on Dunsworth dyno. Yep, 653 horsepower. So it made the same as what they claimed, except for it really is down about 40 from what it did before. So then becomes, where did it go? Well, this week, thank God, I got a helper. So Jamie, the guy that helped work on the Nova for my son, he has to work here in Glenpool, and he get off work at Glenpool. I'm in Broken Arrow, but Glenpool's another suburb of Tulsa. But anyway, he got off work, and he would come just help in the shop. Thank you, God, because without it, I don't know when I'd ever get to it. So I had him take off the heads, and we started doing some investigations. So a couple of things that we've initially right away spotted, and this was a big one. When we took off the heads, I had him tear them down, and the first thing I noticed is, man, that intake valve sure feels light, and it is. This is a Del West titanium valve that he used in it, all right? Now, The Del West titanium valves, to my knowledge, are not coated. And that's a ductile iron seat that's on this engine. So, and I had run a 50-degree valve job when I first did it. And I told him, because the engine shop that rebuilt it, I told him this is what I used. I don't know that that's what they put back on it, because Del West shelf valves typically do not have 50-degree seats. They just don't. They put 45s, because that's what majority of people run for basic engines. Mine's 50. So either one, he refaced this, which is maybe he did. That'd be a pain in the rear, because if you ever reface titanium valves, you know how much it sucks. Maybe they did, but probably they switched to a 45. And this is where things get interesting. This is like I said, Del West titanium valve. It's a 5/16 stem, but he changed all the guides, which makes perfect sense, because if you're putting in brand new titanium valves, and he'd already had, like I said, I think about a season and a half on the engine. So I'm not saying that the guides were worn out, but if you're going with brand new expensive titanium valves, why put them in used guides? Put them in new. So that's what he probably did, and he put all new guides in. Now, my guides were tapered, and these aren't. So there's a little bit of, not quite, but understandable. Not a big deal. But he puts these in. Now, here's one thing I for sure would not have done. So I do not do this ever on these. This is a 5/16 valve, and it's titanium, and you're like, so I don't get it. I don't know if the camera could capture it. This is exactly how it ran. And the camera may not capture this, but on titanium valves, you have two options. You can either run a lash cap, or you can run a hard tip. And what I mean by this is because titanium valves are softer than steel. So when you have a steel rocker that runs on titanium, it will wear out the tip. It will actually destroy the top of the valve. So you have to have some hard metal on top of it to protect the valve. So you can do a hard tip, or you can do a lash cap. Typically, if you have 11/32 valves, which are the bigger stem, you can do either. You could do the lash cap, or you can do the hard tip. For the longest time, I did hard tips, and I never had an issue except for one time. One of them actually broke off, and after that, I was like, you know what? It's probably not the best thing to do. We'll go to lash caps. However, I have never ran a hard tip on a 5/16. And the reason why, if you were to take this valve apart, you see a little bitty pin that's on the inside that kind of holds it there, and that's what it sits on. I do not run hard tips on 5/16. It's not enough material to hold it. We always do lash caps, so to protect it. So that is something I wouldn't have done, but it did not fail. So this has nothing to do with why I didn't make power. I just would not have done it this way, because if it at all gets loose, which can happen, overuse, also any side loading, it will try to pull that tip out and then break it off. And I have seen that on the smaller stem stuff, so we don't do that. But anyway, here's what I found on the heads. So I decided to put the heads back on the flow bench, and yeah, first thing I noticed was a problem. If you may not see this, but if you look, hopefully the camera captures it correctly, you can barely tell it. The helical is above this. Now these are Dragon Slayers. You're going to think that this is a common problem. No, I have never had a Dragon Slayer try to pull a helical, because they're all the way through. So if you look, there's like 4. It's not sticking down in the port. This is well done. I've never had it, right? I've never had it where the helical is trying to come up. And it's not just that one, it doesn't on that one. You could tell, like the lumen is fixing to come out there. And then if you look in it, like this one's for sure, you can see how it's partly coming out the top. Here's the reason why, and I actually pulled this one out. This is what it looks like when you pull it out. Because I started off trying to flow this port, and I was like, I can't get my rocker stud in there. And I was like, oh crap. It's because it's like this. I could have forced it through, I guess, but it still needs fixed anyway. So pull out the helical. This will get a time cert. So will this one. By the way, it never did it on the exhaust. Not one. But it did on the intake. You might say, why did it do it only on the intake? Well, I looked at that. The rocker shafts, they use shims, which you could tell from the indentation here. They use a longer rocker bolt on the exhaust than they did the intake. And usually you do use a little shorter one because you don't want it sticking down into the port. But it had so many shims that you should have used the same length bolt on the exhaust as on the intake. So instead, what you can clearly tell, it was only gauging 2 of the threads. That's it. So it's not the helical's fault. It sounds that way, but the rocker stud itself or the bolt that holds down the rocker stand was only engaging 2 threads of the rocker of this helicoil. 2, not the full length, so not even half. It still had 3 more that could have engaged. Since it wasn't doing that, all that force, which I don't know how tight they tightened them, but all that force was holding that on. So that's only 2 threads. It makes sense, obviously. And that's the reason why I didn't do an exhaust. It had a longer bolt on the stand for the exhaust, but not on the intake. And like I said, if you hadn't had the shims in there, which you had to, he probably had to add shims because, back to this, when you add a hard tip, typically the tips are taller than a normal stainless steel valve. So if the tip gets taller, that means in order to get your rocker arm geometry right, you have to add more shims. More shims makes the rocker bolt, which was fine probably before, not so fine now because you now use another shim, so it's got less thread engagement. But, you see it's on the flow bench. This is one of the things as a cylinder head guy, it drives me nuts. So these are, my names are engraved in them. Weingartner Racing and everything. So this drives you nuts. This is my baby, so it's hard for me. These are back when all of them were hand ported. So it really takes a lot of time with it. So when it left, it floated on both benches, but on this bench, it flowed 330 peak, it flowed 322 at 700, and like 315 at 600. That's how it left. And on the Superflow, by the way, because I verified on both, it was 338 peak, and it was about 6, 7 CFM better on that bench than this one. But still, on this one, peak 330, 322 at 7, I think I said 316, 318, something like that at 6, right? Remember those numbers. I get it back, and I'm like, I'm going to pull on the bench. I'm actually thinking about maybe just having this one digitized to use it, because I know it made 697 horsepower. It's bad. So now it's peak flow. Peak is 316 on this. So it's down 15 CFM. The number at 600, which I'm like, it was like 316, 318 before, 306. Oh. At 700, it's just doing 312. So if someone, this is what kills me, and it's because whatever they did in the valve job. And matter of fact that I am going to go on a little rant here. I was looking at Facebook yesterday, and there was a CT porting post where he'd said, I redid someone else's valve job, gained 60 real world horsepower. First off, if you ever compare 2 different cylinder heads on a chassis dyno, you're full of crap. That's not, we do engine dynos is how you get it accurate, because I don't see any of you checking your trans temperature, make sure they're all the same. You check your tire pressures, and I've never seen any of that. You guys, you cannot do a correct comparison that way. You just can't. But regardless, he did have maybe a point with, well, if you, when I redo the valve job, it sealed up and then it made more power, and maybe that is totally correct. So part of me was thinking, crap, man, these heads are down like 15 CFM from where they were. And the bad part is, let's say I never saw this engine, right? And this guy had sold it, and they're like, oh, it's got Weingartner Racing heads. They're so good. And then they have to go do for a refresh, and they take it to the local machine shop, and they're like, well, let me just flow him because he's supposed to be really great. And then you're like, what are they supposed to flow? He says they flow like 330, and then they flow 315. Then I look like the jack off, you know what I mean? I look like I don't know what I'm doing, when it was someone redid it and ruined it. And I shouldn't say ruined because this can be fixed, but that just pains me. However, saying all this, in fact, that valve job change and the flow, I would like to think it was worth 40 or 50. It's not, because I'm about to show you what the real cause is. It pains me, but this might have been worth 15. I know it sounds like it should be worth like 40, like what the dyno is showing up. All this, even though it kills me that it's not perfect like it was when it left, this is only worth maybe 15. Let me show you what really actually hurt power. Here we have the short block all tore down. Now, this is a Dart little M block, so it's a nice block. And you guys may not know this, but that number, if you were to look it up on the piston, let's see right there. These are Mule forged pistons, and these aren't the power pack ones. These are the super nice pistons. Matter of fact, if Chris Straub would ever finish machining my block, because I ordered the pistons and had him sent the pistons to him, I sent him pistons just like this. I mean, except for 406, same dome and everything. I could do some testing, but these pistons are phenomenal, right? They have like a 1 millimeter, 1 millimeter, 3 millimeter ring pack. They've got lateral gas ports. They're coated. These are great. They even have the nice notches to help out the flow, which we talk about flow in the head, but you know, pistons actually do contribute to that too. If you got the nice valve notch like this where it's radiused out, magic. However, as you could tell, it ends in a 3.5, so this was 35 over that they had to go with. Here's what we found, like instantly. So unfortunately, my dial gauge here, and I haven't built engines in a while, so bear with me because I just never had time. I'm too busy with heads. But what I did is I set up this, just to show you, this was giving an idea how bad this is. What I did is I set up the notch there. Now this is 30, we're gonna act as 0. I wish I could twist this to get it to go to 0, but unfortunately my gauge from not being used so long is stuck. But I just want to show you. So that's 30, right? So we're just gonna rock the piston. You see that? So that was, it's more than 30. You see how much movement that was? So that's almost, it's right around 40 thousandths. When I measured it and get out exactly, it was 42 piston rock, which you're like, well, and by the way, all pistons rock on the board because you've got about, you should have, depending on the piston manufacturer, 4 to 6 thousandths of cylinder wall clearance. So you are always going to have some rock. You are going to have some, right? Even if you brand new engine, you're going to have some rock, right? It's normal. That's normal. 40 thousandths is not normal. That's so much so that if it comes up, it will go, because usually we're running like 39 thousandths head gaskets because we want to get that quench tight. That's so much that it would take, the piston would actually hit the cylinder head, which there are witness marks on the head, which I didn't show you. But even for you guys who are like, nah, it can't be that bad. Stand back up. Okay, that's one thing. Watch this. You could shift the piston that way a bunch. So just using my dial indicators, because this actually happened to be one of the worst cylinders, I measured the cylinder wall. I measured at 4.140. Remember, these are 3.5 piston. And before some of you are like, well, wait a minute, you got the 6. Typically, on the pistons, if it says it's for a 3.5, that's what the bore should be. The pistons will actually be under that to get the right size. So 3.5 bore makes that piston work. Even the piston would actually be smaller, and you measure the bottom of the skirt, blah, blah, blah. So 3.5 should be a 3.5 bore. You shouldn't be a 4.1 bore. So it's way off. And I measured one of the other ones, like this is a 3.9. And remember, I'm not using the dial, the bore. The correct one you would use, the most accurate one. I'm just using, you know, cheap micrometer, but still, that's enough to go, yep, that's not right. So they're all that way. This one just happens to be real bad for sure. The others are off too. So the power loss, I would like to be like, well, it's the heads. You should send them, which I really wish all of you would send back the heads if you ever need them redone by me, because you get them back the way it should be. But this is the power loss. It's not anything else. I don't know, because you could still see all the cylinders. The cylinder walls don't look all that bad. You could see down there, but it had been sitting for a while, so it's hard to say, and I ran on the dyno, but you still got crosshatch and stuff, but it ain't, you could see it on that one too. It ain't right. It ain't right. You're like, how do you not hear that on the dyno? Well, on the dyno, you got the dyno itself making noise, and the engines, we don't have mufflers. I mean, there is big mufflers, but you don't really hear any of it. Also, it's not like we idle it down 1,000 to see if we can hear the piston rock, because you for sure could have heard that. And also, it's hard to hear over the solid roller valve train. But yeah, that's the power loss. That's what it is. Absolutely what it is. And it's nothing to do with the pistons. And here's something else too, because I really do sometimes wish that the camera was set up to record the entire time that I'm talking with Gary whenever we do dyno sessions, just because it's the other stuff that most of you would find interesting. Because he had a customer that come in and they'd only run like 3 nights on the circle track stuff, and they came in because they broke something. And so they're just doing their basic cleanup, and Shane, which is the guy that does the blocks there, he's like, we're over 10,000s on clearance. And they know, and they just sent it out. Like, how did that happen? They had run rich. And if you run rich, it dilutes the oil, and I guarantee you, and they're right, it will wear out the cylinder walls in no time. This guy, though, I could promise you didn't. because his carburetor was used the same carburetor they run all the time. They are religious with maintenance. That was not the cause of it just being too rich. So I'm not entirely certain what happened, but the piston to wall is the problem. So how are we going to fix this? I don't know. I don't technically own this engine, just let me use it. But the reason why I took off the heads was like, I'm going to throw in one of my CNC heads. We'll go redownload this and we'll see how it does, and we'll have some fun when I can learn and get some data. And then I'd freshen up the other heads, put them back on in case you ever, he's going to get rid of it or whatever else. However, at this point, putting on my CNC heads will tell me nothing more than that the cylinder walls are still worn out. So the proper thing to do would be to tear it all down, get Dunsworth, probably going to go 155. Just go ahead and go 4.155 bore, switch to the Mule pistons. However, those pistons alone are about $1,000 my cost. I think retail is like $1,300. You still have labor for the honing of the cylinders and for Gary to put it back together. And yes, I could do it. I ain't got time to do it. But yeah, so that's really what needs to be done. And sadly, because I was really hoping to get this thing going so I could test out the manifold. Let me show you. That was the manifold that Ironhide had sent in for the circle track stuff to test. Because I mocked it up to make sure it all fit and everything. And then, yeah, no bueno. So maybe I could find a bunch of money somewhere, but I've got a kid in college, so the chance of me finding money seems very hard at this point. But it needs new pistons, and then we can make some power. Of course, got to fix. I won't know now if it was the heads, how bad the heads are now, because I have to refresh the heads. But there's no doubt that that had a part of it, the heads. But maybe 20. And I'm really stretching 20. This is the other. So it was down, like I said, right around 40. This was definitely the other 20, maybe 30 horsepower here. This is the bigger problem. And you're like, how did you not see blow by? I don't know how we didn't either. I know how he didn't, because on the valve cover, which we can just look right here, see that little hole there? That goes out and runs to the header. So unless they're running, they don't really see it, and everything always smokes whenever you're on the circle track, it seems like, anyway, from the dust and stuff. So unless it's really, really bad, which, yeah, this is bad, but not enough to show up there, you ain't gonna see it. So, ugh. Anyway, that's it for that. Here's a not so funny story. So I went to go work out at the gym, and then I came home, and let me show you what happened with my AirPods. Because, there's good luck and then there's bad luck, and this sucks. So I'm walking here and I have my AirPods and I go to get them out of my pocket and woo, bam, it drops right. And because, Apple's genius doesn't have a clip or something to kind of hold it together. So blam, it hits down. But when it does, it ejects. They don't just come out, they eject, and it, right, like that. And one of the worst things with your AirPods is that when they come out, is, ooh, it's on the ground, so you gotta clean it, right? So I'm like, all right, no. Oh, there's one. I found that one, right? And I'm super, super happy I found it, okay? Floor's relatively clean, no big deal. Except I can't find the other one. It's missing. And this is the first time ever. Let me show you. See, and it looks like I need to clean the baseboards. But I can't find it. I look everywhere. So I do my Find My. I'm like, I keep hearing the sound, but I can't. Where the hell is it? Because I can't find it. Well, carpentry. You see the gap? It's right there. This little gap. Yeah. Well, what happened is it ejected, hit the ground, whoop, underneath there. It's behind this. And I know you're thinking, well, just get it out. Yeah, just get it out. It's sealed. You're like, well, just cut a hole to get it out. I can't do it. I can't cut cabinets. I just can't do it. I can't do it. Although these probably need sanded and painted, but I can't do it. So yeah, lots to the world. That's going to wrap up this video. Thanks for watching. Life is what it is. Look for the cam challenge. I need to check in with Kuntz and see how they're coming along with the engine. I haven't even had a chance this week. I've been trying to get jobs out. You need to make money. So anyway, as far as you're wondering, how's Bishop doing? For those that how's his college life going? Because we dropped him off 2 weeks ago. First off, My wife seems a little bit better. That we were all definitely having a hard time the first week. This is a little bit easier. It ain't easy. It's just easier. God, I miss him a whole lot. I hope I don't cry. But anyway, we got to talk to him for like 40 minutes on Sunday, which is very rare because he does not like to talk on the phone. And I was like, "How was your first practice?" Because I know he had his first practice at Henderson for swimming. And I should back up. When he was doing his club swim at Swim Tulsa, they focus more of their training is actually in the pool, and they do less dry land because she thinks it's different on the joints. She still does dry land, and it's quite a bit. But anyway, his first day at Henderson, it was a ton of dry land, like burpees and something else, and pull-ups, burpees and pull-ups, and it was a huge long thing. And then they had to go swim 600 yards, and then they had to do a kick set. And he's like, I suck at kicks, so I couldn't even enter interval. And for those that don't know, they give you an interval to swim back and forth across the pool. And if you go under the interval, you get like time to rest. But if you're at the interval, you never rest. You just go the other one again. And go, so he sucks at kicking, and he knows it. So he didn't even get that. So he was like sore, and he's telling us, he's like, "Yeah, it was pretty rough." And he said, "I don't care. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it." And I was so proud of him because I was like, I hope it doesn't beat him down. But he doesn't have a quit in him. It didn't exist. I didn't even a speed bump to him. Like he said, I threw up 3 times, but I still kept going. I was like, that's my boy. You just keep working it, buddy. Because I have a feeling he's going to be like a lightning rod when they finally get to swim meets, which I look forward to going. He said classes are easy, and I said, buddy, you're going to jinx yourself. First off, this is your first year. You ain't even got to the real hard mechanical engineering classes yet, but don't be pretending that it gets worse. It gets worse, okay? They're just setting you up. But he said everything's fine. He likes the cafeteria. He seemed like he's having a good time. He got to go hang out with his friends and got to go to real parties and stuff. And yeah, he's just growing up. But yeah, he's doing good. So hard being without him, yeah, yeah. But he's moving on. Anyway, that's all I got. You guys remember, I'm no Superman. I did race Superboy. I don't pour cast iron heads. You guys take care.